Hello, welcome everyone. This is number two of the Community Wealth Building Centre of Excellence series, and it's on entrepreneurship, business, and community wealth building. And I'm Neil McEnroy. I'm the chief executive. I'm Neil McEnroy, the chair of the Economic Development Association of Scotland. I'm not in my usual spot that people know me. I'm usually sitting there at Oban. I'm now today in lovely Barrhead in the East Renfrewshire Council's offices. Very nice of them to let me sit here in their office. Very nice offices. So we're talking here about business, entrepreneurship, and how it relates to community wealth building. And it's central, of course. We're talking here about growing an economy, having a successful economy with high levels of investment, jobs, great supply chains, clusters, productivity, innovation. All of this is part of what community wealth building can offer a local economy and a regional and national economy. And I'm particularly interested, and I'm sure some of the speakers will touch upon this, on the question of productivity. One of the reasons we don't have productivity in the economy is because we have a misallocation of capital. We see capital that is not being invested into the firm, into research, into development, into innovation, but is actually being extracted at a rate of knots in some cases by external shareholders and dividends that go to places and people very far away who use those monies on consumption rather than reinvestment in the firm. So community wealth building is particularly important in ensuring there is plural forms of ownership, inclusive forms of ownership. That means capital and investment is more readily used for productivity reasons. Community wealth building is innovative economy. It drives an innovation economy. That's enough from me. Please, as we go through the seminar today, please put your questions or thoughts in the chat. What this community, we know, answer each other's questions. There's some great dialogue. So as things are going through, please put things into the chat. And also, if you've got any specific questions, put them in as well, and we'll deal with them at the when all the contributors have spoken. So without further ado, we'll push on. We've got really lucky today to have Michelle Quadrelli, who's the managing director of Scott and Fife, a fantastic employee-owned firm in Tayport. We have got Stacey Dingwall, who's the head of policy and external affairs at the Federation of Scottish Business. So welcome, Stacey. Fantastic individual and brilliant organisation, I would say. And then we have Nyla Wood, who's the head of social impact in Barford Beatty, who have really been striding ahead, really, in terms of work around community wealth building from a large construction firm. So good on all of them. We'll hear from all of them. I'm going to be quite brutal on time. You've only got 50 minutes each, and I'll give you a 2-minute warning. And then after that, we'll get into a little bit of discussion from me and pick up some of the questions from yourself. So keep the chat going as we're going through. There's no insult to putting things in the chat as people are speaking. And I'll pass you over now to Michelle. Welcome and thank you for your time, Michelle. And the floor is yours. Thanks for being part of this Community Wealth Building series at EDAS. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil, and hi, good afternoon, everybody. The main pressure for me today is hoping that I can share my screen okay. So I'm just going to attempt that right now, and hopefully it looks okay. And you can see a presentation, and then I just need to get myself sorted here. Okay, so we should be on to the next slide, hopefully. So hi, yeah, I'm from Scott and Fife. So Scott and Fife's an award-winning employee-owned Scottish technical textiles company. We've really got a rich heritage of textile innovation with a commitment to really shaping the future of textiles and materials technology. As Neil said, we're based in Tayport and Fife, and we started out as a linen works back in 1864. So we shared our 160-year birthday last year. We've really got a real clear focus on design and innovation. We've got a strong history of diversifying over the years, which is why we're still here. We've got a 90-strong team of employee owners. Where we really look at high-performance solutions to countless industry challenges, really diverse as agriculture, automotive and construction. So we deal a lot with engineered fabrics to reinforce structures suitable for materials that reduce environmental impact, but also other areas and other market industries that are really quite diverse. 94% of our products go overseas, so we're really truly international in terms of where we supply to, and we really look to grasp new opportunities and drive progress by transforming these kind of conceptual ideas into commercial innovations. And we kind of attribute much of our success to our employee ownership structure. Really, we've placed the control or the reins of control in the hands of the workforce and the people that know the business best. And we've really shaped a highly motivated, engaged and aligned workforce who are really willing to go that extra mile to achieve our shared goals as a business. Innovation's been a huge part of what we needed to do to really diversify the business. We had a strong history that was really dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of technical textiles. But in 2010, we embarked on a journey with Glasgow School of Art where we looked at creating cultures of innovation within organisations and within our organisation, specifically for us. And we really learned to develop and learn new creative-based skills using design thinking. And these skills have really been developed further with the work that we've done subsequently with the V&A Design for Innovation team at V&A Dundee. These skills sets are really used across the business now, where we really look to help increase idea generation and creative thinking. Really best utilised by taking a kind of diagonal slice across the organisation. So really encouraging an equal input and stay, where we get cross-functional, multidiscipline teams to work on specific ideas or look at improvements through the business. They're really used widely across the organisation, and they're really used to help to really encourage innovation, which has really allowed us to continue to diversify and really develop ourselves as an organisation. The world we live in is moving faster and faster, and we need to be on top of that. So why did we move to employee ownership? Well, one, it was a succession model for us. We were in the 4th generation of family ownership, and there wasn't a 5th generation to come. The transition to employee ownership was about sort of securing the long-term future of the company and the community. And to the family owners, it was really important for that business to stay where it is. They were really reluctant and concerned that a larger organisation would come in, take over the business and then move it offshore. But we also felt a structure like employee ownership was really supportive to the innovation culture that we'd started to develop a few years before. So focusing on innovation and restructuring around their culture to really help the business survive, revive, and kind of thrive as an overall organisation. So the design innovation element and the employee ownership work really well together. It's allowed us to see kind of increased employee engagement and commitment. There's that ownership mindset, that kind of shared purpose that everyone wants to input, come up with ideas that are going to be better for the organisation because it's going directly back to them. That empowerment and decision making, we've got that, but we run like a normal business. We've got a board of directors, everyone has their own roles, but we're certainly more transparent about how the organisation's doing and how we perform and what we're looking to do and achieve as a business going forward. And really we look to encourage input and questions and really promote that. Let's try lots of different things. It's okay to fail, but let's fail fast and look at developing ourselves further. And a lot of the key outcomes we've learned through both of those areas working close together is there's that long-term thinking. With other organisations, there might be that more emphasis on kind of short-term success, but we are invested for the long-term future of the business and the long-term success. And really that helps us to put money back in and invest back into innovation and also our adaptability and flexibility as an organisation. We've got a lot of stability and resilience, so it really creates that stable business environment because we're all aware of what's happening with the business. It's in our control. There's not somebody elsewhere that might come in and make a decision that we won't be aware of. The collaboration and knowledge sharing has really been quite significant in terms of how we work together. We really are team driven. The employee ownership element fosters that sense of shared purpose and making our employees really they think like owners, but they want to collaborate. We want to work together and share ideas. And that really works throughout all areas of the business and whatever we're looking at. We've got a real open culture and we've really enhanced that innovation around what we're doing because of that. There's also other benefits with the employee ownership structure. So things like financial incentives, everyone can invest in shares in the business. 20% of operating profits are distributed equally across the whole organisation as a bonus. So my bonus is the same as anybody else in the business. We've all got an important element of what we contribute to the business, and that's rewarded equally. And we've got that enhanced customer focus and that focus on how how we're doing in sales. People throughout the organisation are interested. They want to know how things are going. And we've really, because of the rewards and perks that you can have from an employee ownership company, it's really helped us retain and attract employees into the organisation too. So the results of what we've seen is we've really seen a vast changes in the products that we can offer and the value streams we created. From introducing innovation and design thinking into our business, within 5 years, 80% of the products we were making, we hadn't made 5 years previously. So a real rapid turnaround in terms of what we do. And we've got a real feel fast attitude of let's try things, get them out there, get feedback, which has really got us down to sort of doing probably about one rapid prototype a day on average. The last 2 years, we've seen record operating profits, which has meant record bonus for everyone within the organisation. And, with our latest employee survey, we said, look, how happy are you working at Scott and Fife? 10 being brilliant and 0 being not happy at all. And we averaged across the whole workforce of 8.07, which I think is really high compared to probably other organisations. And we've really got a diverse and flexible workforce who really embrace change. And that is so important with the world that we live in right now, where there's volatility, markets going up and down, that we really need to look at how we can react to that on site. And that is something that we see hugely. So in terms of what's happened since the introduction of design in 2010, we can see at the start of the blue lines, and then the employee ownership introduction in 2013, this is what happened to our turnover. So you can see where the business was going. There was a decline in terms of what we were achieving in terms of our sales revenue. And then we've really started to turn that around, introduce new products, introduce new markets for us, and then look at our processes internally and improve that we've now received 2 record operating profits in the last 2 years. So we're really seeing the financial rewards of that. We've also seen some awards in person as well last year. From these 2 pictures, I can tell you one of them was an event that was held in the evening, and one was a lunchtime one, and I'm sure you can probably guess what is what. But we were really delighted to win the Steed Internationalisation Award just under a year ago, and then the Dundee and Angus Chamber of Commerce International Champion Award as well. And that meant so much to everyone back at base. We took again a diagonal slice from the organisation to both of these events to help really kind of come together and celebrate the success that we've had. And hopefully that was the first 2 awards we've gone for, and we've won both, and hopefully we'll continue that success into this year. So just really in summary, in terms of employee ownership, it really has supported the transformation of our business into dynamic and innovative environment. We've got motivated employees. We're really empowered in our decision making, and we've got a shared vision for success that comes together that really supports the local employment and recirculate the wealth locally. Thank you.
Michelle, thanks for also for keeping in time, and also for a fantastic presentation. And I'm sure many of the people watching this were really fascinated by that. And you're a great example of a manufacturing firm that's employee ownership, that's indicative of community wealth building. There's hundreds, if not thousands, across Scotland who are employee-owned cooperatives. And there may be some people out there think community wealth building is all about the public sector. Community wealth building is about procurement spend. Community wealth building and inclusive ownership, like your firm, is about an innovative and dynamic economy. It's about the effect. It's about resilience. It's about internationalization. It's all the things you're talking about. And I think it's really important to get that message across, because I think it's not that common, but there is people out there who do feel that community wealth building is a public sector thing. Inclusive ownership is kind of like a few social enterprises, a bit of community ownership. It's kind of fluffy, not the mainstream economy. That's just nonsense. This is real important stuff. And increasingly across the world, we're seeing more and more employee-owned firms, because it's a great way of creating resilience, innovation, and dynamic use of capital within the firm and within industries. So thanks for all you do, and thanks for coming today. And please get your questions or thoughts to Michelle for later on. I'll pass you over now to Stacey Dingwall, who's the head of policy at FSB Scotland. Stacey, lovely to see you again. Thanks for joining us. The floor is yours. Same again. I'll give you a couple of minute warning, but the pressure's on because Michelle was well on time.
I think I've got famous last words I probably shouldn't say. I think mine is under the 15 now. I'll go over.
Oh, good.
Fingers crossed. Okay. Perfect, thanks very much. So yeah, today, as you can see from the title, the subject that I've begun to talk about is public procurement as a lever for economic growth, innovation and local economic success. So what that really means, I'm going to talk a bit about the Scottish Government's community wealth building legislation and some steps that we think that they could take to help within. Sorry, 2 seconds. I'm actually just having a wee bit of a nightmare with my slides, so if you just bear with me 2 seconds. Tested it before, but of course,
You're all right, Stacey. Take your time.
it is not happening. 2 seconds. Okay, perfect. Hopefully that's working now.
good.
So just before I get started, just a little bit about FSB Scotland. So you can probably tell from the name, we are a business organisation focused on amplifying the voice of small businesses in Scotland. Again, as you probably know, these kind of micro, small and medium enterprises comprise almost all of our businesses in Scotland. They employ just over 900,000 people and also contribute £93 billion to the economy. So they are a significant driver of the Scottish economy. So as I said, today what I'm going to focus on is the community wealth building legislation that the Scottish Government is bringing forward and the key bits for FSB Scotland or our members and some things that we think could help drive forward the kind of community wealth building agenda as an economic lever for growth. So, as you may know, the Scottish Government consulted on its community wealth building legislation in 2023. It's actually coming up to 2 years now, I believe, since that consultation came out. And that looked at issues across 5 pillars of activity, which is spending, workforce, land and property, inclusive ownership, as we've just heard about from Michelle, and also finance. And in the last couple of years, the Scottish Government has since committed to taking forward the legislation in its programme for government just towards the end of last year. So spending is really the key pillar and aspect of community wealth building for us and our members. We carried out some research in 2019 FSB, which showed that local government spend around £7 billion per year purchasing goods and services. And we've also had figures from the Scottish Government supplied to us that shows that total local government spend in 2021 was just under £7 billion. For comparison, total NHS spend for the same period totaled just over £3 billion. Central Scottish Government spend was also just over £3 billion, and education spend was just over £1 billion. So I think you can see that significant spending power, which if we effectively harnessed it, could make a real difference to local economies. Buying local can help councils support new jobs, create new businesses, and of course reduce their carbon footprint. And given the audience that we have today, I'm sure that's something that you're all very aware of. It's also clear that this is recognised by the Scottish Government due to the progress that's been made in the last decade, for example, through procurement reform and the sustainable procurement duty. So that research that I mentioned in 2019, that found that the progress that we've seen there has not yet resulted in smaller businesses, particularly micro businesses, which are those with under 10 employees winning a large share of public contracts. Each year, Public Contracts Scotland publishes a usage report, which sometimes includes details on procurement spend by size of business in Scotland for that year. So the last available report that we have, which shows that data, again, is from 2021. Shows that only a small proportion of the value of contracts awarded that year, which was more than 13 billion, went to the smallest businesses, despite them accounting for the vast majority of enterprises in Scotland. So I said the last data report that we have that breaks that down is 2021. So it would be really helpful if we could get back to including this data in the annual PCS report so that we're able to track that progress or otherwise in terms of the spend with small businesses. So if you look here at the slides, you can see that the spend for 2016 to 17 showed that of the just about 11.5 billion public procurement spend that year, about 7% went direct to micro businesses, about 14% went to small businesses, and then the bigger share, the 31%, went direct to medium-sized businesses. So unfortunately, that's shown there's been a bit of decline in progress since the introduction of procurement reform, which was suggested would deliver a larger share of the value of public contracts to smaller Scottish businesses through new duties placed on Scottish public bodies. So if we look at the 2021 report that I mentioned from PCS, that shows that over half of that spend was won by suppliers with a Scottish address, which means that an even smaller of total procurement spend goes to businesses that are small and based in Scotland. Again, if we look at the figures for 2016 to 17, about 56% of spend was secured by suppliers with a postcode in Scotland where the postcode is known. But it's also important to caveat this data by acknowledging that spend with a business with a Scottish address does not always translate to that well staying in the community. So just because a local authority buys cleaning supplies from a large company who just happens to have a Scottish branch, it doesn't mean that that money will then circulate within the local authority area or even Scotland, depending on the company's operational procedures. So the main source of data that we look to in terms of local authority spend with business is the Improvement Services Local Government Benchmarking Framework. So if you look at the latest figures, which we have up to 23-24, fortunately, we can see that overall local authority spend with local businesses is heading in the right direction. However, if we then break that down to local authority level, and there's quite a lot of data there, so you might not be able to see it on the screen here, you can see that the proportion of procurement spend with local enterprises varies significantly across the country. So you can see some councils up Highland, for example, can spend about 50% with local enterprises each year, while others are barely into double figures. We know that this can be partly attributed to the different nature of rural and urban economies and communities, but variations also exist between urban councils. For example, if you look at North Lanarkshire, they're allocating almost 30% of their spend to local enterprises in the last year, whereas South Lanarkshire is just under 20%. This data set also shows significant variation made in progress since the baseline year used for benchmarking procurement spend by Scottish local authorities, which is 2010 and 2011. We can see that while one local authority has increased its spend with local businesses by over 15% in that time, another has reduced their spend by over 8%. So overall, while promisingly 19 councils have increased their local spend since 2010 to 2011, 13 have decreased their spend at the same time. So if we look at year-on-year spend, it's a similar story, with 17 increasing spend while 14 decreased. There's something that has been really positive is the community wealth building pilots, which the Scottish Government initiated a few years ago. So as you probably know, there were 5 pilots in Clackmannanshire, Fife, Glasgow City region, south of Scotland and the Western Isles. We engaged quite heavily with these community wealth building pilots, predominantly through our development managers who represent our member interests in local areas. It was really welcome that our staff were included in these pilots, and more importantly also our small business members, as a means of ensuring that that small business voice is heard and most importantly reflected in the development of these pilots. And if you look at the stats recording the pilots, it indicates their success. Clackmannanshire, for example, set a target in 2019 to take local spending to 21.5% by 2022, and I actually hit just over 23% in 2021 ahead of schedule. Fife has also made significant progress in going from just over 20% of spend in 2010, 2011 to just over 40% 10 years later, so that's quite a significant increase by 5. Speaking to my colleagues, development managers who were involved in the pilots on the ground, they tell us that there are 2 factors that they see as enabling the progress of the pilots. This was ownership on the part of the local authority and also strategies with clear targets and detailed monitoring arrangements for local spend. If you look at Clackmannanshires annual procurement report, for example, it allows them to not only evidence to community wealth building stakeholders what progress has been made, but also includes concrete actions that they've taken in order to produce and sustain their progress. A caveat though, if we do look at the most recent figures for both Clackmannanshire and Fife, we can see a decline in their spend with local enterprises, unfortunately. And we're quite keen to understand why that might be. Has the push from the initial pilot, is that fallen away in more recent times? We're not quite sure why we're seeing a bit of a decline in the progress made in those 2 areas. So a couple of years ago, when we were responding to the Community Wealth Building consultation that the Scottish Government put out, we sought member views in two ways. The first was by asking specific questions related to community wealth building and procurement in our big small business survey. We got about 600 responses to that survey, and it found these were the key findings if you look at the slides here. So there's kind of low belief that key players in the local community understand the needs of local businesses. The vast majority of people told us that they had never actually gone for a public contract, and those that had found the process quite complex and challenging to navigate. We also held a roundtable with members to enable them to provide input into that response. We heard examples of great practice in terms of working with local authorities. However, again, discussion did focus on bad experiences of tendering for contracts, which has maybe put them off doing so again. We had a bit of a chat around Public Contract Scotland, engagement around that. There's quite a lot of support for increasing the use of quick quote. However, there was a bit of a feeling that businesses had to be in the know in most cases in order to be involved in those contracts. We have actually just launched our 2025 edition of the Big Small Business Survey today, which will be asking similar questions around procurement. So we're really looking forward to refreshing that data set in the coming months. It's open for 6 weeks, and I will share the link in the chat. We would appreciate all responses and shares if anyone is inclined to do so. In terms of where the consultation is at now, the analysis of responses to the consultation found that with regards to the Scottish Government's approach to community wealth building, this was the favoured the combination of a duty requiring Scottish ministers and other public sector bodies to embed the community wealth building model with a duty requiring the public sector bodies obliged to be involved to produce strategies and action plans. That was the option we favoured, and we were glad that that was the overall consensus in the response to the consultation. So as a lobbying organisation at FSB and also a member of the Bill Steering Group, there are some key actions that we believe Scottish Government can take to address some of the issues that I've outlined today on previous slides. The targets are really the key thing we would like to see included in the legislation. While the data shows some progress, I think the trends that I've highlighted today show that we need something additional to ensure that this progress is maintained and built on, as it would be a real shame to lose the progress made. Colleagues working on the ground with local authorities and small businesses are starting to share more and more anecdotes about the good work being done in terms of increasing local spend. We're hearing about real commitments. Only last week, the universities and college across Edinburgh and South East Scotland came together to sign a community wealth building pledge, which solidifies their commitment to driving inclusive growth and sustainable development in the region. We know that the last few years have been extremely challenging for small businesses, and unfortunately the challenges are persisting. Our latest figures show that small business confidence in Scotland is as low as it has been in recent years. However, despite kind of the gloomy news, over half of the same businesses are telling us that they want to grow their business in the next year. So increasing that share of local spend with those businesses would be a great way of helping them do just that. And it would also overall boost economic growth and help us tackle some of our other bigger societal challenges, which we'll only be able to do if we do boost economic growth. And hopefully this is something that we can all agree on as being worth the effort. We look forward to continuing to engage with the government at all levels as the legislation goes forward, and also key stakeholders on behalf of our members as we move forward with the legislation. Thank you very much.
Stacey, thanks again. That was fantastic, and it really thanks for keeping to time as well. Really important, I think, in terms of but also you reminded me, of course, about not that you need reminding, but small business in Scotland. It's the glue that holds many of our places together. We're a country of small business. It's a mesh, and it's not just your everyday homey services. It's a whole range of stuff and a whole range of sectors, and all those small businesses can grow. It's our growth potential. It's a success potential. It's our prosperity potential. It's a just transition potential, and it's brilliant. I think that how FSB have supported community wealth building, and also what's important is. You honed in on procurement rightly, but there's also, in terms of fair work, in terms of finance and landed property assets, and of course, many of your members themselves are, inclusive and democratic business models in themselves. So No, great stuff. And there's a few wee comments and questions in the chat. And on the chat, we've got a bit of a problem. Teams is always an issue, isn't it? Teams. Some of you can't type in the chat box, which is annoying. But please keep your questions, and we'll ask you to put your hand up afterwards if you can't actually use the chat function. Also, I've told by our resident expert, Alison Jones, that you can actually go out again and come back in again briefly, might actually help to solve the problem. So I hope sorry for that inconvenience. It's not our problem, it's Microsoft Teams. We're part of that big plutocracy, and we've just got to work with the systems we've got. But without further ado, thanks for that, and thanks for that, Stacey. Let's go to Nyla Wood, who's the head of social impact at the large construction firm. I think it's construction firm, but also other stuff. I'm sure they do. Balfour Beatty, who also have been a great supporter of community wealth building over the piece. So Nyla, the floor is yours. And I'll give you a 2-minute warning if you need it, but the pressure's on because you don't need the 2-minute warning because nobody else has needed it, so you won't need that.
I'm a Glasgow girl, so I talk very fast anyway, so I'm sure we'll be fine.
Great, thanks. Welcome, and thanks for your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everybody. I was asked to speak today about what Balfour Beatty is doing around fair work, social impact, and cluster development. So I'm just going to use my session to talk you through some of the things we've been doing, and would welcome anybody that thinks they might want to partner with us or any ideas they have of how we could develop and grow what we're already doing. So kind of starting off with, why do we do this work? So as part of our kind of sustainability strategy, we actually have community objectives that are factored into that. So that's my kind of license to operate, so to say. So within that, core values that we've got within our strategy that we have to report on annually, that our shareholders and our board are looking at and kind of holding us accountable, is supply chain integrity, community engagement, employee diversity, equity and inclusion. So those 3 pillars that sit alongside our environmental impact are just as important and just as graded about what we're doing. And to me, this ties in really nicely with what Scotland's ambitions are around community wealth building. So it's one of the reasons why I've been given so much time and space in this area. So my presentation, I'm going to explore each of these themes a little bit further, but also tie them into fair work and cluster development. So kind of taking it back to Scotland, so Balfour Beatty, huge international juggernaut of an organisation, but Scotland is the heart of what we do. It's our history is here. We've been here over 100 years. Mr. Balfour was a Scottish civil engineer, so it's our legacy, our heritage. Doesn't matter if we're operating in Hong Kong or Los Angeles. Our roots are here in Scotland, and one of our first projects was in Dunfermline on the trams projects. So what we do in Scotland matters, but it's also kind of protects our heritage. So when the Fair Work legislation came around, and we were looking at Minister Lockhead and all the ideas that they would have around net zero and the just transition, to me, everything that we do around community wealth building ties in really well to fair work and what our behaviours are, but also it's the right thing to do. And that personally is something that drives me. Aligning it to our strategy, aligning it to our just transition and net zero capabilities is important, but it's the right thing to do. We're a responsible business with Scottish heritage, so our reputation means everything to us. So for the purpose of this presentation, what I've done is I've taken the 6 principles of fair work, and then I've given small examples of what Balfour Beatty is doing in each of those spaces. So safety, zero harm, it's our absolute first value. It's our license to operate, and it's one of the few things that we have in the business that we have zero tolerance for. So if your behaviours are causing unsafe practices on site, it can lead to dismissal. So things like drugs and alcohol testing are there, just to ensure that our sites are safe and everybody goes home safely at night. Our driving practices, our work home balance is all accounted for, which makes me really proud of what we do. That it's people behind these huge infrastructure projects, not machines. Then in Scotland, we've been able to align ourselves to the living wage, which we're really proud of. And then the other things are internal campaigns, so the right to respect. And I didn't really know when I came to Balfour Beatty, well, what is this right to respect? Surely that's my God-given right from my employer that I've got a right to respect. But this was to look into he kind of building site or construction associated banter, this idea that it was okay because it's just a bit of banter. But actually, that's not on, because you might be having a bit of banter, but there's somebody in the corner who, again, is feeling incredibly uncomfortable, doesn't know what to do. So that inclusivity piece. So that's the first three principles of fair work. Then looking at our effective voice, we have an employee engagement survey, and it's a confidential survey that goes out. It goes out company wide, and it gives everyone a real opportunity to say what they want to do, make any contributions that they want to see come into place. We have committees that run it, and you're given. The confidential piece is really important, that, you know, not everybody at Balfour Beatty is sitting behind a desk and can take their time to do this. Sometimes we have to set up private spaces within building sites where people can go and answer this on a building site, and they can take, and it's all anonymised and people won't be able to track it back to them. And then similarly with our Speak Up confidential phone lines, these are, you know, there's no way of tracing it back to you. We run huge campaigns around, you know, if you would feel comfortable, it would be good if you could tell us who you are and what you've seen, because then we can investigate it further. There's occasions where we can't go any further because we don't know enough detail. And it just seems that if only we could instill more confidence in people to speak, but we're still happy that people are using the confidential phone lines where appropriate. We have an ethics officer network. So within all our different businesses, within all our different countries and regions, we have an ethics officer. So I'm an ethics officer for Central Scotland. And within this role, we receive training and advice on how to identify modern slavery, how to support our supply chain with these issues. We have to run sessions around anti-bribery training. I always have an absolute typo and I call it bribery training. So I always have to make sure I say anti. And we have newsletters, and don't just go out electronically, but we have physical hard copies that people can access on site. So that's one of the biggest challenges that I found when I moved into the construction industry. It's one of the few places that's still in this day and age, the majority of people aren't sitting behind a desk at a laptop on a day-to-day basis. They're out there, they're on the tools, they're on sites, they're in locations where there's hardly an internet. So we have to make sure that our comms are reaching everybody. And then looking into fulfillment and opportunity. So I've been at Balfour Beatty 10 years, and it's no secret I'm really proud to be part of Balfour Beatty. I feel even though we're international and we're massive, there's a real family feel to what we do. And I think that comes from these two principles of fair work: fulfillment and opportunity. And these two are about, we have a really fantastic recruitment referral scheme. So looking into, you know, I feel passionately about what I do. I enjoy where I work. I'm treated fairly. We have a referral scheme that supports that. We also have a 5% club. Our CEO, Leo Quinn, he is one of the founders of the 5% club, and the 5% club is fantastic. It's about ensuring that everybody in our workplace, every team, every division, that 5% of that population is engaged in some kind of learning, development course. And that then we have the Balfour Beatty Academy, we have access to further education funds. So it's all about our own capabilities, nurturing the talent, supporting the talent, but also identifying the skills gap and what we need to be able to get ready for the kind of the green transition, but also the digitisation of the industry. And then finally, the affinity networks. And this is looking into all the different protected characteristics that exist and allowing our people to be part of one of these affinity networks. I've recently taken on the role as co-chair of the Multicultural Affinity Network, and it's taken me a long time to be able to do that. I've been at Balfour Beatty 10 years, but I worked in big business or large NGOs before that, and I've never felt confident to talk about my lived experience and share my story and have those challenges. And I do actually feel I'm finally in a place where I feel safe enough to share those, and in a place where I don't feel that it's tokenistic or tokenism, that actually my story might inspire others and I can be a role model for other people. Because not only do we have not enough women within STEM and construction and engineering, but then people of colour, it shrinks again. And we look at it as in a group, Multicultural Affinity Network, we're looking at the ethnicity pay gap, gender pay gap, kind of opportunities for mentoring, opportunities for shadowing leadership, all lots of different things, and that has to come from a place of feeling safe and valued. So then moving on to social impact, this is the kind of bread and butter of what we do, and the majority of tier 1 contractors are engaged in these kind of activities, and most of that is defined by the sustainable procurement duty. But I would like to think that we can go a little bit further and beyond because of that, because of the model that we use, that we support regional economies wherever we go. We hire local subcontractors, supplier diversity, but also support young people to come into the industry. So for that reason, I've kind of taken two of the areas that I'm most proud of, and that's probably our education programs and also our work with D&I. So from an education perspective, I really wanted to find out kind of a scientific approach to what we did, because when I came into construction, by the nature of building sites, you know, people that run the if it's a new school project or a new hospital site or whatever it may be, those teams are historically, they love going into primary schools, they love going into high schools, and they do a bit of a health and safety talk, because by the nature of the people within the industry, they're quite sociable. It might be somewhere where they went to school themselves, they want to go in and do it. But there was no recording of what they were doing. There was no quality assurance on what was going out there. There was no ensuring that, you know, the same messages were coming across from the industry. So I carried out some research, and the research was looking at what was stopping minority groups, so including women and people from an ethnic minority background, from joining the construction industry. And one of the key messages that came out of that was, regardless of your ethnicity or your gender, by the time you got to high school, you no longer wanted to work in construction. So you loved it all the time you were wee, and then you get to high school and you just don't think it's cool. So that made it, so we dug further, and it was looking into, well, what works, how much engagement do you need to do with one 7-year-old to turn that into a career in construction? And the kind of the sweet spot is something like 3 to 5 times. If you have a positive experience with a business or an individual, you're likely to consider that is something that you think is a career option. So from the back of that, we've kind of developed a big schools visit. We've also partnered with the Royal Geographical Society of Scotland to give us a way of kind of making the industry more than just builders and joiners and plumbers and all those things, to kind of make it bigger, to make it more relevant, give us an idea of what impact construction has in the environment, what organisations like mine are doing to help decrease that, why we need young people to be thinking really proactively, why we need their minds to be thinking of stuff that we haven't thought about yet. So it's a fantastic partnership, and it also allows us to utilise our own workforce. So what we do is we encourage people to pick a primary school that means something to them. Their kids go there, their grandkids go there, their wife works there, their husband is a head teacher, whatever it may be, that will allow them that kind of 3 to 5 different touch points. So they'll, rather than speaking to the whole assembly, they might deal with a primary 5 class and then go back to primary 6, primary 7, and a view that when they hit secondary, they're going to have a far more positive experience of Balfour Beatty and the construction industry. Moving on to secondary schools, this is kind of, we're out there, we're talking about apprenticeships, we're doing careers events, we're running online sessions.
Couple of minutes,
this
Nyla.
is quite standardised, yes. And then moving on to higher and further education, again, we have created a dedicated role for a skills and employability manager, and we did this so that it was what would drive the impact within these kind of core skills gaps that we have within the industry, within planning, energy, civils, quantity surveying. So we're kind of working with these core organisations and local authorities, colleges, universities, to really drive what is a worrying skills gap in these spaces. But my final slide is about diversity and inclusion. I've kind of touched on it before, but we're doing quite a lot in this space, working with groups like Building Equity to look at the kind of LGBTQ plus community, how we can make construction a safer, more appealing option for people who identify or are allies with one of those communities, but also looking at more women. We run an Equate Constructionarium programme every year, and we've also got a mentoring programme with Black and minority ethnic kids, and they start off coming in as undergraduates. They come in as an internship, we take them away, they do rock climbing, kayaking, stuff like that with our site teams, and then we look at then how we can turn that into a graduate placement. And then finally, the cluster development piece. There's two elements to this, and I'm going to fly past them. But to me, this is all about stakeholder engagement and enabling our supply chain to be more confident, to work with us and to get onto our supply chains, but also to work collaboratively across the industry. There's two areas where I'm really proud of what we've managed to achieve in working collaboratively, and one is the Scottish Pathways to Construction, and the other is the Scottish Academy for Construction Opportunities. Both of these programmes have been funded by the CITB. They're looking at bringing priority groups into the industry. And that's me, Neil.
Thank you for that, Nyla. Fantastic, great presentation. And you know, you can't do a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff there because you're doing a lot of stuff. And I think what's important here is, you know, community wealth building is about economic development, economic system change. It does mean, though, that businesses need to pivot and change. Businesses is for good. It's about well-being. It's how it relates to place, people, and planet, and its workers. And I think what you've cantered through is an example of a business that is thinking about that wider relational role with place. And what Community Wealth Building has been doing is, you know, this is done with a fairly supportive Scottish policy framework. But we can do more, perhaps, within the Scottish Community Wealth Building legislation to have more of this percolating through an economy. Also, I was really struck by Balfour Beatty. I didn't know about its history, but that heritage, the provenance, its identity, its relationship to the trams, I think you said in Dunfermline, that history is so important in an economy. It's rooted in part in Scotland, even though it's a big global corporation. So, no, thanks for that. And I think we're starting to see that the connection between business, entrepreneurship, being good business, economically, socially, and environmentally, and how it relates to CWB. Right, we've got, oh goody, we've got 25 minutes, so that's great. We can get some questions going. I'm going to ask the three participants a question at the end, and I want you to think about it whilst you're listening into the questions. It is, if there's one thing you would like to see in the community wealth building legislation, what would it be and why? So that's your question, that's your exam question, but you're going to have to answer other questions as we go on. And the first one I want to ask is from Geraldine Woolley, who's had a question from Michelle. Now, Geraldine, you may wish to come onto the call and actually say your question in person. Do you fancy it? Come on, Geraldine, don't be shy.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and make it very pithy. We can hear you. Fire on. Right. Michelle's all ears.
Okay, all right. It's really a question to Michelle. Can you talk about how you financed the transition from family ownership to employee ownership and how that has affected your ongoing financial situation?
Yeah, sure. So from employee ownership, there's lots of different models and different ways that you can do it, and there's different ways you can set up the business. For us specifically, we had two brother owners who were both continuing to work in the business. And what they did is they transferred the ownership across at the end of 2012. And the way they did that was they basically kept the cash in the bank in the business. And then the view was for the company to pay that amount back over a period of time, which was agreed. And we've done that. It's almost like a loan repayment that we do over a period of time that allowed the company to still have cash in the bank, still to continue to operate as it had done that year and ongoing. And then we've been able to be versatile in terms of our repayments, depending on how the company does and how we look to kind of pay that off over time. But for them, we've been very fortunate in terms of how they handled that their focus was about keeping the business stable, keeping it in Tayport, and giving it a solid foundation to allow it to continue to diversify and grow.
Right, thank you. I must admit, I think that's a very generous offer.
It's very generous, yeah.
I think this is a real example of keeping community wealth in the community. I'm from Fife myself, so yeah, I know how important that is around here.
Yeah, well, great question, great answer. And of course, we do need to think about the ecosystem we have, the financial ecosystem we have moving forward. because we do want to triple the number of inclusive and democratic business models in Scotland by 2034. I know that Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Government and High, SOSI do great work around supporting employee ownership, but we need to think about the financial architecture around this moving forward because of the significance of employee ownership as a dynamic, innovative facet of the economy. Good, great stuff. There's a question now from, well, it's a kind of question, but I thought it was an interesting point. Keep firing stuff in. There's some great stuff going on. Clackmannshire's got a great event going on there. Thanks for putting that in, Paul. There's a survey that Stacey put in. This is for you, Stacey. This is for you, Stacey. And it's from Gillian Kirkton. There's a question in there about the anchor institution contracts. I want you to come on call if you're not too shy, Gillian. Otherwise, I'll do it for you. Gillian, do you fancy it coming on?
Yep, no problem.
Good on you.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just an observation. I mean, I think we all know that you've just highlighted, Stacey, that a lot of the smaller micro companies don't get a bite at the cherry of the big local authority contracts. And certainly within CDS, we see the opportunity from that procurement pillar and the plural ownership pillar to kind of merge them together and to have a look at the potential opportunities that in particular consortium cooperatives may help with. Now, there aren't a great deal of them. We know that. We know that the model works, but in CDS, we know that there's some flaws within the model, but we know how to solve those. But from a local authority and anchor institution perspective, we feel that more could be done. And I've mentioned the focus groups that we're doing there. We don't know enough about the barriers. Are they perceived? Are they real? How can we solve this? But I think there's a massive opportunity.
Yeah,
Just an observation.
You know, it's a good observation. I think just turning it a little bit of question, Stacey, if you don't mind, maybe you want to take a question from that, but there's something here about the consortium model for small businesses to bid into contracts, and there's something about the anchor institutions coordinating themselves, to go as one in a way to consortia of small business rather than just one institution doing its own. Any thoughts to that? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Definitely.
Sure.
Hi, Gillian. Thanks for the observation. No, I think you're right. I think I've talked today about increasing procurement spend by local authorities, blah blah blah. But we know, on the flip side of it, there's still an awful lot of confidence building and kind of organisation, logistical support that small businesses need to be able to do just that thing you're kind of talking about, the consortium. I think we hear from a lot of our members, it's something that they know about, it's something that they know it's a possibility, but it's just finding the time to actually, link up with other small businesses and, because it can take time. It's quite a bureaucratic progress. And I think, given the challenges that a lot of small businesses face at the moment, they just maybe don't see it as a priority, while they're, to be honest, in some cases trying to keep the doors open and the lights on. But I'm not answering your end question yet, Neil, because I'll say something different. But I think one thing that the Scottish Government needs to do is boost the kind of funding and support they provide, whether it's through CDS or the supplier development programme. Those are really good initiatives that are helping small businesses. They need more of it. We'd like to see more resource in local authorities to drive forward the agenda and do a bit more of the work that you're suggesting with small businesses. So fingers crossed they find some more cash within the legislation to do just that.
Thank you. Great comment. Great question. Great answer. Thanks a lot. I just note in the chat there's something that you mentioned, Stacey, vis-a-vis Fife, and Derek, I think it is, mentioned something about updated figures in Fife. Just to keep flag that up in the chat. And there's a question here from Nyla, which is from Simon. Oh, Simon Cleary. Simon, hello there. Nice to see you again. Thanks for joining the call. Simon, do you want to come on call and ask your question? And if you're too shy, I can do it for you, but I'm sure you'll come on. Come on.
Oh, but I'm here.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I'm curious as to how your approach to maximizing socioeconomic benefit, which is essentially what you guys are doing very proactively, how that is received by your end clients, or the people who you're doing the building work for, whether or not that's local authorities or housing developers or energy or infrastructure development organizations. Is it something that they support you with? Are they apathetic to it? Do you find a range? And I suppose also because I'm assuming you'll also subcontract out elements to other other specialists? Is it something that you encourage them to buy into as well? Do they have to sign up to anything when you subcontract them?
Absolutely. Thanks, Simon, for your question. So it's a real bit mixed bag. So at Balfour Beatty, something like 70% of our contracts are with public sector organisations. And the honest truth is sometimes I'm quite frustrated with the questions we're asked at tender stage. I'm really driven by this. I have a whole team dedicated to this, and we're not really challenged at tender stage about what we could do. We're kind of given a shopping list of some apprentices, some charity donations, how many of these are you going to do? And that becomes part of our contract. So I always make a commitment to kind of running a local needs analysis, making sure that what we're doing is relevant to that community at the point that we arrive on site, because a tender process can have started 5 years before that, so, something I wrote 5 years ago, I'm kind of going to my head, go, what does this actually mean? So we do a local needs analysis when we arrive and make sure that what we're delivering is actually what those communities and those regional economies actually need. Where appropriate, we will ask local suppliers to support us on those. So, for example, creating new jobs, creating apprenticeships. It's more relevant for the local supply chain to create those. So, if that's in Falkirk or Inverness or Peterhead, it's local people that have got those jobs. But there's occasions where that's not possible. We'll then look internally and look within the Balfour Beatty group if we can host that and we can find people who live locally, and that can take a bit longer. So it's a real mixed bag, Simon. So I don't have a clear answer to your question, and it's because each procurement body is different and at different stages of its maturity. But my experience so far has been that they could challenge us as tier one contractors more. There's more we could do, and there's more that they could, but you have to tie that up with, if they're not going to give us the points at tender stage for being creative, for being innovative, then they end up getting quite a bland response, because sometimes they give me half a paragraph in a 400-page document to tell them what I'm going to do.
Thanks for the questions, Simon, and thanks for the answer again, Nyla. And Simon's question, and you answered it well from the Balfour Beatty perspective, is really goes to the nub of this here, because when we talk about social value and community wealth building, all the additional things that you do, Nyla, at Balfour Beatty, there is this, what would you say, oversimplistic idea that it's a condition and it's extra cost on business, it's a burden on business, which is kind of well, it's not common, it's out there as an idea. But of course, there is wider benefits to the firm, there's wider benefits to the economy, there's wider value appreciation that comes from that, added value that comes from that. There's also a competitive edge. And so we really need to start to, not have any truck with the notion that social value or community wealth and its different facets is in some way a cost to business. It's actually more often a huge advantage, a benefit, a value appreciation, an added plus. So I think it's a really important question, Simon, to bring up, because I think it goes to some fears perhaps that people have around some of this thing around social value, community benefits. Now we've got a hand up from Annie Watt, and I'm intrigued what it could be. Annie, what's the question or thought or comment? Oh, was it a legacy hand? Oh, how disappointing.
No, it's not. Sorry, I was still on mute.
Oh, brilliant.
New year, still making the same old mistakes.
Happy New Year to you. And pithy as hell. Go be quick, but fire on.
It was on your wish list for the legislation. So I've got a couple of points that I wanted to just raise. First one being the quick quotes, query around whether we could get that 50k threshold increased. So we are economic development at Midlothian Council, and we can influence the quick quotes much easier than we can the tenders, because they've got to go through that formal process. And the second one is on the tenders. Like most local authorities, we tend to use existing frameworks where we can. So Scotland Excel, for example, and what we've found recently is contradictory to community wealth building. It's quite challenging for businesses in the local area to access those frameworks, because they're only open at a certain point in time and might not open for another 3-5 years type thing. So it was just whether there could be any flexibility around opening them for new contractors to get onto the framework type thing.
Nice, lovely. Yeah, no, I don't think there's a question there, but it's really good points you make anyway, Annie.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Because
Well,
you're kind
if
of
you can
playing
make
into
it
what.
happen is the question, Neil.
Aye, I'm on it. It'll happen tomorrow. No, no,
Thank you.
no, it's not. It's noted. Noted. I'm sure I see some nods from our guests here. Right. I'm going to go to the question for Derek. I don't know who wants to answer it, but Derek, is it Derek for Fife? Derek, are you coming on?
I'm here. Sorry,
It's
I
a
was
question about anchor collaboration.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if anyone has had any success with anchor collaboration in their respect in areas within Scotland. We've got a Fife partnership, and I find that at the procurement level, because we've all got differing governing bodies, it can be a little bit difficult to coordinate our wish lists, etc., and community benefit approaches. We're trying very hard, and we're getting there, but I don't think we're getting there fast enough.
I would agree with you what you said, Dan. I picked at your question because it was a great question, particularly also because in part it plays into the duty that may be put on public bodies, because the duty could actually stipulate that there's collaboration around some aspect potentially of spend. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying there's the potential there. So there's something there about the greater coordination. And what you pick up on is the silos of different departments with their own pots and their own rules, and you kind of see that collaboration in place. But I wonder if any of my guests here have had any experience of this. Is there anything you think, where you've seen anchor collaboration in a place to help with contracts? Stacey, you can say no, you don't know, because I don't know either. Like, you're talking deep collaboration.
No, nothing that is springing to mind. No.
I may be wrong, but there's been conversations in North Ayrshire about this, right? For sure. There's been conversations in community planning partnerships about this, for sure. But actually, whether it's happened or no, I don't know. Nyla, what do you think?
So it's kind of loosely linked to what we're trying to achieve around this. Is a project we're running in Kincardine Bridge, where we've built a new bridge, but Bear are the maintenance company, and we are working. We've now almost finished building the bridge, so we're about to leave. And if it was an old-fashioned handing over your ring binder, here's your contacts, here's everyone we're working with, that's what we're hoping to do with Bear. In a view that these are the organisations we've supported, here's employability groups that have been around, all these different partnerships, because the idea that, because these huge infrastructure projects don't come time and time again, there's no budget for that. So I'm trying to get to a point where I'm leaving the ring binder and going,
just pushing on Nyla, that is voluntary, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's just you and you thinking this makes sense. There's no stipulation or guidance or anything like that. You just interesting. And that's just two partners potentially coming together. It's not like the Anchor Network or through the Community Planning Partnership.
And Michelle, we could do so much more in construction if people took away the competitive edge on social impact and were thinking about the communities.
Brilliant. I'm going to bring Michelle and then I'm going to bring Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Michelle.
I think it's something that's been talked about for a long time, but in reality is never really, people have tried it, and we've signed up to certain initiatives with a view that have been looking to do it, but it's never played out. But what we do know is we can see that it does work. If you've got the right people on board, within our organisation, I was talking about that diagonal slice. That's about, coordinating something centrally, but multidiscipline, cross-functional teams getting together, and we've seen huge results from that. It's just a shame it's not been really achieved. Well, certainly from my experience on a wider scale, others might have different experience, but from us, it's something that's never played through.
No, you could be right. I did have a really interesting conversation. Community Wealth Building is partly developed on design thinking in terms of part of its methodological worldview, if you like. And I did have a great conversation with V&A in Dundee and Creative Scotland about design thinking principles within anchor partnerships and within procurement. But that was that was a wee while ago. But imagine that if you put design thinking or mission thinking inside anchor procurement processes, then you can kind of have to break down some of those silos.
Yeah.
Rachel, lovely to see you. Thanks for putting your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's not one of mine actually, but it's just one I'm borrowing. So it was to let you know about it. The Edinburgh City Partnerships have managed
Sorry,
to...
I missed that because I spoke over it. Was it Edinburgh City Partnership?
Yeah, so Edinburgh City Partnerships Community Wishes approach. I don't know if anybody's on from here, but they managed to share that across partners. They did it as part of their city deals. So effectively they have community wishes where they go and get the kind of communities, what people want in the communities through their portals, but it's multiple partners that deliver them. Now we are hoping to build that into our own wishes. So, and we're already starting some conversations with Aberdeen University to start that. So the kind of idea is that the council sets up the infrastructure, but the other anchor partners get to use it. So it's just a kind of, it's a good model which we have borrowed from.
Great, good. That's nice example of that collaboration. And I'm just here sitting beside my colleague in East Renfrewshire, Lorna, who I've forgotten her second name of, Lorna Wallace, and she was saying they're trying to do something here similar in East Ren. So
the Glasgow City region. So we've got a new community benefits hub, which is where our wish list is, and we're using that in East Ren. And the next phase of that would be to roll that out across anchors like Strathclyde University and other anchors like that. But we're not there yet.
Brilliant, that's great. This is great. We're at a table with people here now as well. Fantastic stuff. Thanks, Lorna. Thanks for coming in. Right, we've got 7 minutes, and this is we're going. There's probably other questions there, but I'm going to ignore them in a polite way because I'm wanting to know one legislative thing you would like to see under the auspices of community wealth building and why. And I'll start with playing with Stacey. I'm going to start with Stacey because she's at the top of my screen.
Thank you, Neil. Well, yeah, I guess the kind of key thing for us is including those statutory targets for spend with small and micro businesses. I think, we've seen what progress has been made when local authorities have set their own targets in terms of achieving it. So for that final push, if we set these statutory targets, that's what we're backing. And of course, adequate resourcing of local authorities to be able to meet those targets once they're in place.
Yeah, and those and the why of that, of course, is that would increase the density of money flowing through our local economies and our small businesses. And also we have to remember Annie's point and Rachel's point about the thresholds, the quick quote thresholds that was made earlier. Thank you for that. Nyla.
So I've been thinking about this, and what I would like is a greater correlation with the wellbeing economy piece. So looking at everything that we as contractors are doing to ensure, that because we're little communities, wherever we pop up on these huge projects, that the wellbeing of our employees is, I don't think there's enough about the wellbeing economy within there. And also, I think Stacey picked up on this earlier around the funding streams. So it's in order to diversify the supply chain, there has to be more investment going into those organisations so that they're able to deliver and they've got the ability to kind of take on these huge packages of work that are potentially coming their way.
What do you think about the main duty in the legislation vis-a-vis a stipulation on public bodies to consider community wealth building?
So I'm kind of looking at that from contractor side, and I feel quite frustrated that there's a kind of suspicion on the construction industry that we're not going to do it, that is a burden. It's kind of what when you wrap up earlier, that if we can move away from this idea that the sector doesn't want to do this stuff and it's a burden to us, and actually we've moved on from that 15, 20 years ago, but I don't think the legislation sees it that way. It feels quite prescriptive rather than come on this journey with us.
Interesting. There's something new about the tone and narrative of the legislation.
Yeah.
The great stuff. Michelle, one thing in the legislation that would help you and why?
I think it's around that kind of that business support, whether it's small business or SMEs, whether that's financial around provision of grants, low interest loans, or whether that's more support towards training or kind of legal support and things like that. We touched on it a bit earlier with the question I got around that kind of moving into whether that's employee ownership or businesses that are wanting to change in some way to be more supportive towards this. It's like where can they get that support and how is that kind of provided?
Yeah, no, and I think whilst there might not be legislative elements to that, they're clearly attendant to the legislation will need to be guidance, ecosystem of support around it. Yeah. Look, we're coming to the end. We've got 3 minutes to go. This has been. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And we had a quasi competition about how many people were going to be on call, and we've got a few's dropped off, but I think we had 67 at the top, maybe 66, and I think one of us said 67 or 66, didn't we? But I'm not. Oh, you're claiming it, Michelle. Well, EDAS is going to give you a fantastic prize for getting how many we would actually get. Isn't that right, Elaine and Alison? Great, they can't answer. You're getting a prize.
Absolutely.
Might be a ton of
chocolate
cheesecake or a
I'll try not to get too excited,
Are you a
Neil.
chocolate fan, Michelle? You're a chocolate fan?
I love a bit of chocolate, yeah.
Right, we'll get that sorted.
Chocolate on its way, Michelle.
Thanks, Elaine. We've not. Look, we're not we've not got a lot of money to EDAS, but we're no skinflints. We'll find some chocolate. And sorry for making the product placement there. Sorry about that. I mentioned a product name. I don't think you're allowed to do that. Anyway, the next event we've not got a date for in this series is going to be an international lens. Many of you will know that I'm the global lead for community wealth building with the Democracy Collaborative, a USB think tank. We're going to have an international feel. That'll be exciting, won't it, about community wealth building? So we'll hopefully really hear from some people stateside, possibly maybe get somebody from South Korea, maybe some Amsterdam. We'll get some international stuff. So that'd be a great session. We don't know the date yet, but coming up. Also, we have the feedback form. Now, the feedback form, I'm one of these people, when I hear feedback form, I groan, right? And I go, oh, no, not the feedback form. But I do fill them in, but when organizations are learning organizations and are trying to continuously improve their session, their work. So please fill in the bloody feedback forms so that we can get better at what we're trying to do. Because we're nothing if we don't have an audience and we don't have people wanting to interact with us and tell us what we should be doing next. So please fire in the feedback form, which is in there in the chat. Or is it on the bar? Is it on the QR code as well, Elaine, Alison?
Yep, it's all there.
Yes, the code.
Does the QR code do it as well, Alison?
It sure does, and the link's also in the chat box.
I knew it would. I just better check, because you're so efficient, so brilliant. Right, that's us. We're 1 minute on. Nyla, Michelle, Stacey, you're brilliant. Love what you do. Thanks so much for spending time with us. It's been great. And to all of you, 66 people, 67 people at the top, now 58. Thanks very much for coming. That was our Community Wealth Building Series number 2, Entrepreneurship, Business and CWB. Signing out. See you again soon. Have a good afternoon and a good week. Cheers.